Thank you. Cool. Hi, everyone. Thanks a lot for joining us today. As Alex said, feel free to ask questions. There'll be time for questions at the end of the webinar. And the slides are also going to be available. So if you go to era.net/Kerbu, you'll be redirected to the slides where you can see a copy of them and follow along. So don't worry about making notes or anything like that. And I'll give you this link again at the end. So what we're going to talk about today is what makes successful content and how you can really reverse engineer successful content and use that information to create your own content and increase the chances that your own content is successful. So the three main things. The first thing really is the story. Most successful content has some kind of a story or a hook or an angle, something behind it that really makes it different or stand out. The second thing is usually the data. So there might be some unique data that's never ever been seen before, or it could be some data that has been seen before, but this is a new way of slicing the data or a new story that's been generated from the data. And the third part is the production. So maybe you don't have a story, you don't have any great data that's new or unique, but the design or the way something's been developed is so visually beautiful and stunning that that is enough to make it successful. This can happen quite a lot if you've got a really good designer or someone who's really good at building cool content. Sometimes stuff just works because it looks absolutely amazing. And the idea is that most successful content will come down to having at least one, if not more, of these three things. So if you can have a story that's unique and different, or unique data, or beautiful production, you're much more likely to be successful with that piece of content. Now, there's also one more, which I want to talk about. I'm not going to go into too much detail, but I wanted to demonstrate it because it's really important. And that's an existing audience also helps. Here's a tweet from Lady Gaga. This is from about 4 years ago. Now, this tweet, as you can see, is just 5 words. Never be afraid to dream. Now, this got, as you can see, around 52,000 retweets and 18,000 favourites. Remember, this is back in 2011, when she didn't have as big an audience as what she's got now, and Twitter was still growing at that point. Now, the reason this did so well is because of her existing audience. I mean, the tweet, it's fine, I guess it's inspirational, but it's nothing really special. It got shared and it was, went far online because of her existing audience. If you don't have an existing audience, such as my old boss at Distilled Will, who tried to tweet exactly the same, it doesn't really work. And he got 5 retweets, 2 favourites, a couple of which I'm pretty sure he asked for. So if you don't have that existing audience, then you can't really expect to get the same results as someone who does. I'm going to talk about the importance of this in a moment. And let's be really honest about what we're trying to do here as well, in that content marketing is really hard. And the problem is, and the thing that makes it really frustrating and makes it kind of harder, even harder, is the fact it looks really, really easy. From the outside at least, you look at the process and you think, well, we'll brainstorm some ideas, we'll all get into a room, be creative, write lots of post-it notes and notes on the wall, and come up with lots of ideas. You'll then choose one of those ideas, just which one you think is best to move forward with. You'll then brief a designer who will bring that idea to life, or maybe brief a developer if it's an interactive piece of content or an interactive idea. You then publish it on your website and then promote it. You do some outreach, you do some link building, you promote it on Twitter and Facebook, and your job's done, and everyone's really, really happy. The problem is that it's not quite that straightforward. Ultimately, it's a lot harder than that, and if it was that straightforward, a lot more of us would be doing it consistently well, and the fact is it's really hard to be consistent unless you're someone like Red Bull. Now, this is where, going back to my previous point about an existing audience, this is where this is really important. So one thing Red Bull can do is, when they're doing that brainstorming in the same way that we all do, and trying to think, what can we do to drive awareness of Red Bull, what can we do that's really, really cool? And when they're doing that brainstorming, they can say things like this. Someone can sit there and go, let's throw a guy out of a spaceship, let's do that. And they don't get laughed out of the room like most of us would. They can actually do it. And obviously they did a couple of years ago. This cost them around $30 million. I'm guessing that most of us haven't got the budget for that, and most of us aren't Red Bull. So it's really, really hard to expect that we can do exactly the same. And the thing is as well that Red Bull have got that existing audience. They've got millions of followers on Twitter, Facebook, all sorts of social channels. They get millions of hits to their website. They've got that existing audience. So even if the idea isn't as crazy as let's throw a guy out of a spaceship, even if it's something a bit more average, they're still more likely than the rest of us for that content to be successful, because that audience will share it for them. It will share it without really thinking. That audience will share something because it's Red Bull and they're so well known and so famous. Unfortunately, a lot of us don't have that that resource. So brainstorming and idea generation isn't as easy for most of us. And the fact is that it needs restraints and guidelines. We can't just say let's throw a guy out of a spaceship. That's a silly idea. And the fact is that when you're brainstorming, not all ideas are good ideas. Even though people say a lot of the time when you're brainstorming, all good ideas are good ideas, that's just not true. If you go into a brainstorm with your team and spend maybe half an hour to an hour brainstorming and you come out with 100 ideas, if 90 of those ideas can't be used, then that's not a very efficient use of the people in that room's time. What you really want is to come out with a majority of those ideas being usable and being good for the project you're working on. If you don't, you're kind of wasting people's time. So I don't think that all ideas are good ideas. And doing it consistently is really one of the hardest parts, particularly if you work for an agency where you work across multiple different clients in different industries. Doing this for different clients is really difficult, and doing it consistently, every single time, doing it well is really difficult. So I wanted to share my approach to these issues and share how I've tried to fix them and improve them at Era. And the first thing to admit is that I'm by no means a creative. I've worked with creatives, I know what they look like, I know how they work. I'm definitely not one of them. And about 10 months ago, I started Era with this guy, with a blue arrow pointed at him, a guy called Matt, and he's not a creative either. He's actually more of a geek. He's someone who codes, he can build stuff, he can hack stuff together. So between the two of us, we could kind of build stuff and do processes, but we weren't really creative. So he can build stuff, which we thought, well, this can help us. This is one of our dashboards at Era, something lovingly named Death Star, which helps us gather data and intelligence when we're putting together content campaigns. And we worked on our processes from scratch. We thought we're not both creatives, but we can put processes in place. We can build tools, we can build software. What can we do without having that creative knack? And I had a few strong influences in this process. So even though I'm not a creative, I'd had various creative influences. These are 3 books that I would highly recommend you all read. If you work in content marketing or creative at all, these 3 books are definitely worth reading. Made to Stick, the one on the left, it talks about what makes an idea memorable and sticky in our minds. The middle one was actually written, I think it was around the 1930s, 1940s, by James Webb Young, and it's very, very short. It takes about 40 minutes to read, and talks about a natural technique for coming up with ideas. And the one on the right-hand side is actually written from an advertising perspective. So it talks about how you can come up with ideas for advertising campaigns. Now, that sounds very different to what a lot of us do, but the process is actually very similar to what we go through for content marketing. So I definitely recommend those 3 books to at least get you started with this stuff. But at heart, I'm actually an SEO. Like I said, I'm not a creative. My SEO background is still there. It's still a strong influence. And I like processes, and I like being able to reverse engineer stuff. So I figured, can I just reverse engineer what others have done and do it just a little bit better? Can I kind of cut out some of that lack of skill around creativity and just see what others have done and improve on it a little bit? It turns out, yes, but with a nice consultant style asterisk on the end. Sometimes ideas just fly and you've got no idea why or how. And you kind of have to accept this. You can't obsess over it too much. You can't kind of get hung up on it. Sometimes you'll look at a piece of content or you'll look at something online, see that it's had millions of shares and done really well, and you'll have no idea why. It's probably going to be a picture of a cat. So sometimes you just have to accept that and not obsess over it too much. But a lot of the time you look at a piece of content and you can see why it went big and why it did really well. And the fact is that you only learn by doing this stuff. This is why a lot of agencies don't actually pursue content marketing in the long term, because they do maybe 1 or 2 good pieces, then do some bad pieces, and then kind of struggled to keep that consistency. The fact is that you only learn by doing this stuff and getting better each and every time that you do it, because each piece of content is different, each client is different, and each industry is really different as well. And the whole process is actually really big. The process we've got at Error at the moment is actually around 50 steps. Now, I've not got time to go through every single step with you, and we can do that another time. But for this webinar, I'm going to focus on a specific part of the process. I'm going to focus on the step where we're doing research and we're trying to feed strong research and information into the brainstorming stage and the idea generation stage. The idea being that if you can do this and do it really well, the output of your brainstorming will be a lot stronger and you'll end up with a lot more ideas which are usable and ones that aren't rubbish and you can't actually do them. And our goal is to create a brief so that everyone involved in the brainstorm knows exactly what they're walking into. In that brief will contain some themes, some ideas, some visuals, guidelines and restraints. And ultimately what we want to do here is prepare the people walking into that brainstorm as much as possible. Because if they walk in cold, have got no idea who the client is, got no idea about the industry or what's been done or hasn't been done, they're not going to come up with ideas that are that useful. Whereas if you can provide them with a brief in advance, which I take a quick look through, do a bit of Googling around and research themselves, they're far more likely to walk into that brainstorm with some useful and strong ideas. So let's go through the process. Step one is to find the stories and the themes. If you're not using BuzzSumo already and you're working content marketing, you're losing out, to put it simply. BuzzSumo is a great tool. Allows you to see content that's working well in pretty much any industry, any keyword, or for any competitor. So I'm going to walk through the process, focusing very much on BuzzSumo, but I'm going to talk about a couple of other tools as well. If you're not familiar with BuzzSumo, go and take a look at this post which I wrote on moz.com, which kind of gives you a bit of an intro to BuzzSumo, covers a few of the basic features, and talks a little bit about advanced stuff as well and how you can use their API if you're interested in that kind of stuff. So what we're going to do is actually use a travel example. I've picked out this travel blog, one I actually quite like, called Nomadic Matt. Matt's basically a travel blogger. And I'm going to use this example throughout the rest of the talk, but the first point I want to make is that step one of the process is to look at your content competitors. Now, these can be different to your normal competitors, and it's really important to understand the difference. So when you're looking at your usual competitors, you're probably going to look for people that rank for the same kind of keywords as you or target the same keywords as you. So if you're a travel company, you may target keywords such as flights to New York or apartments in Los Angeles. Whereas if you're a travel blogger like Matt, you probably don't target those kind of keywords that much, if at all. But Nomadic Matt will still produce content that is relevant to the same audience, to the same end user. So even though Matt may not compete in terms of keyword rankings and commercial keywords, they will compete because they produce content which produces traffic, produces links, and produces social shares, which of course are the things that we care about as marketers. So it's really important first to identify and find your content competitors. You can of course put your normal competitors through this process as well, but just don't ignore the competitors out there that produce great content but don't compete for the same keywords as you. So the first thing we want to do is put Nomadic Matt's website into BuzzSumo, and what they do is order the results in terms of total social shares. So from top to bottom, these posts have gotten the most shares on his website. Now the first thing to do before you do anything else is to quickly scan the results. So scan the titles, scan the authors and the shares. And the first thing that stands out to me with this set of results is that the top 4 most shared posts on his blog are lists. They're lists of things. If I scroll a little bit further down, I can see words such as why, how, what, these kind of things. So either questions or kind of how-tos and that kind of stuff. So I can see really quickly there's a couple of trends here to show you what's working for him. Now the thing to point out here is the Red Bull Lady Gaga problem, where Matt may be getting these large numbers of social shares, at least in part because he may have an existing audience. So we need to try and filter this out a little bit and try and get results that aren't influenced too much by competitors who have got massive audiences already. So the way you can do this is to run several competitors together through BuzzSumo. So this is how you do it. You just take the domain, put in or, and put in the next domain, and do that for as many as you want. So when you're doing this, it's really important to make sure you include competitors who haven't got massive audiences already. Ideally, you want people in there that have got either the same kind of audiences as yourself, or maybe a little bit smaller. And this will kind of even out those spikes a little bit from the really big websites. What you can also do with BuzzSummer is use keywords. So rather than putting in someone's domain, you can put in their keyword as well. So, for example, sticking with travel, you could search for New York travel guide or guide to New York City. And BuzzSummer will show you which pieces of content have got the most social shares that includes those keywords. Now, I don't use this as much as searching for domains. The reason for that is because these results tend to be a little bit more noisy. So you'll tend to get results in here which just aren't as relevant, particularly if you're looking at broad keywords. So you have to filter out lots of mainstream news websites, lots of really big press and magazines, and sometimes those won't be as useful to you. So generally I try and stick to domain searches and competitor searches, but you can use keywords as well. Once you've run one of those searches and combined all those competitors, you want to export the list to a CSV. And then the next step is to get the link metrics for each of these URLs. So you can see here, these are the most popular URLs on our competitors' websites by social shares, but we also want to see who's doing well in terms of links. So we export to CSV, and we take that list and run it through a tool such as URL Profiler, which allows you to really quickly fetch Majestic and Myscape and Ahrefs link data. Lots of other kinds of data as well, but for the purposes of this example, we only really want Majestic, Myscape, and HTTP status just to make sure that something's still working. And then the output you can put into Excel and do a little bit of pivot table magic. So these are the settings that you need, and this allows us to see which domains are being linked to the most. So you end up with something like this. So we can see here that actually Nomadic Mac is second in line behind a luxury travel blog, which appears to be getting the most linking domains. Now, the great thing about this process and what BuzzSumo does is that generally it will filter out the homepage from its results. So 9 times out of 10, the most linked to page on a website will be the homepage. That's just obviously natural. That's the way that the web works. But BuzzSumo filters that out. So what we're seeing here is that a luxury travel blog is actually getting the most number of linking domains to its internal pages, and those pages are its content, its blog posts, its guides, all those kind of things. So this is a really true picture of which websites are most link worthy and generating the most links. And then what you do from this point forward is you pick out the ones that are getting the most links, then you do a deeper dive on them using BuzzSumo. So I can take a luxury travel blog, pull it into the content analysis section of BuzzSumo and hit search. And what this allows me to do is take a deeper dive into that specific domain. So I've seen that they're getting lots of links. Now I'm going to see exactly why and try and figure out what they're doing well. So one of the things that BuzzSumo does is shows you average shares by content length. So this is showing us that piece of content for 3,000 words to 10,000 words generally get a lot more social shares than 0 to 1,000 words. Now this is really useful to know because when you're brainstorming and coming up with content ideas, if one of those ideas is a long form content guide, you've got the data here to show you, well actually in this niche we can see our competitors are doing quite well. So it's actually a good idea in that instance. For some industries that we've worked in, this will actually be flipped around and longer form guides don't get as many social shares or links. So in those cases, you may actually want to rule out long form content ideas because you can see that they're not really doing very well for your competitors. BuzzSumo also tries to break down content by type. So here it's broken down list content, why, how, and what. So we can see exactly which ones are getting the most social shares. So again, we can see that lists are actually getting a lot more social shares on average than the rest of the content and how-tos and that kind of stuff. So this gives us a really good idea of what they're doing well. And what you can also do when you've got that CSV is paste all of the titles into a word cloud tool such as Wordle, which I've linked to down here in the slide. And this will combine all those words together and show you which words are basically getting the most social shares and most links. So here, just glancing over the results, we can see things like experiences, safari, destinations, photograph, all sorts of things that we can use as inspiration. And basically, the bigger the word, the more social shares and links those themes, those words are getting. So this is really useful for us to know, and within a few seconds you've got some inspiration for content. You also want to scan the list in your CSV. So firstly, order it by most referring domains, pointing at the content, and then scan the list for ideas. So look at the titles of each blog post, scan the list and see, can I do any of them any better? And this could be a restraint, because if you come across content that has actually been done really, really well already, and you genuinely don't think you can do a better job, then you need to know that, because you shouldn't start brainstorming about that, developing the idea, only to find out that someone else has done it and you can't improve upon it. Also ask yourself, as you're scanning that list, can I update any of them for 2016? And this can work quite well, because some people will do guides for 2014, 2015, and those will get lots of links, but obviously they're confined to that one period of time. So if you can do an updated version for the current year, then you might be able to get the same level of traction, the same number of links and social shares. So this could be an opportunity for you as well. There is going to be a feature of BuzzSumo soon where that will allow you to filter by date as well. I think at the moment you can only go back around 12 months. You can go further back with the API, but they are going to release this feature soon, so you can actually segment by date and show all of the posts from a certain time period. So this will become a bit easier to do in the future. So as you're doing all of this work, you're taking in lots of ideas, taking in lots of data. What you want to be doing is adding all of this to your brainstorming brief. Another tool you can use outside of BuzzSumo is one called Epic Beat, which works in a very similar way. So you put in your topic or your website, and then it will go off and tell you what's performing well related to that search. It's very similar to BuzzSumo. It's just the data is presented a little bit differently. I don't find it quite as clean, but it's really good for giving you additional data that BuzzSumo might not have. You can also use a tool called Hublin, and Hublin's more for keyword-driven content ideas as opposed to topics. So what you do is put in a topic that you're interested in, and then you'll go off and pull back a bunch of keywords. So here, all I've searched for is the word travel. So it's pulled back a bunch of keywords, and it allows you to filter by the type of keyword. So in this case, I've actually filtered to say, show me all keywords that include the word travel, but also are questions. Hence, these all start with why, what, how, that kind of stuff. So I can see the search volumes in the middle, the competition and the cost per click. This gives me a good idea as to what people are searching for that are questions, so I can actually answer these questions. So in terms of what is the best credit card for travel, if I can answer that question, I know the search volume for it, I know that there's a high cost per click for it, so if I can rank for it, that could be really valuable to my business. Another tool I'd highly recommend is Brandtail. Now, Brandtail is probably best described as a site that curates native advertising campaigns. So it looks something like this, and you can search for keywords, you can filter by campaigns or by publishers, but what it allows you to do is see what brands are doing in partnership with publishers. So if I search for travel, I can see that in the top left corner of the Telegraph are working with British Airways on a custom content series. On the bottom row, I can see that Airbnb are working with the Huffington Post. So if I click through to that, oh no, I haven't got a slide for that, never mind. If I click through to that, I will see the actual content of that campaign. So I can see exactly what Airbnb are doing with the Huffington Post. Now these are really, really useful, because generally these brands will be paying a lot of money to these publishers to work with them on these content campaigns. So you can bet that a lot of resource has been put into them. You can take a look at what they're doing, see whether it's working, and see whether you can replicate the idea and do it a little bit better. And Brandtail also allow you to sign up to an email newsletter where you can get like a summary every week of new campaigns that are being run across lots of different publishers. So it gives you a really good idea of what brands are doing at the moment in terms of content marketing. The second step in the process is to find the data sources. So there's a few ways you can do this, but the key really is just to know what is available to you, know what's out there, and know what you can use. Now, don't overthink this. It's easy to do. I've done it before. In this case, all I've searched for is travel industry data. First result on the list is Statista.com. If I go further down, here's loads more. But if I click through to Statista, I can then search for things like travel destinations or whatever keyword I want. And within a few seconds, I've got lots of different reports, different statistics related to travel. Now, knowing that this data is available to me is really important because this can help feed into my brainstorming. So if I want to do some kind of data-driven piece, and I'll need some data around the most popular travel destinations for North America, I know I can get that data because it's right here in front of me. So knowing what data is available is really, really important. If you can't get your own data, then what you can use is something like Google Consumer Surveys, which allows you to really cheaply gather data from the general public. And you can filter by country and demographic, that kind of stuff. So this is really, really cheap. So you can try just a little bit to see what happens. So you can get 100 responses to a single question for about $10. So if you've got an idea for a survey, an idea for a piece of data that you think could be interesting, you can get 100 responses, see how the data looks, and if it looks strong, looks like it could be promising, you can put some more money into it and see whether you can get a full survey done. Now you will need more than 100 responses in order for the data to be credible and that kind of stuff. So generally you probably want more than 1,000, maybe 2,000 responses. But if you just test a little bit first, you'll get a good idea as to whether that data is going to be interesting, as opposed to spending a few $100s and finding out that actually there's nothing interesting there. If you work in industries that are actually very regulated or require kind of formal surveys to be carried out, YouGov and OnePoll allow you to do this. They're accredited, recognised companies for carrying out proper surveys with real people. So even though Google Consumer Surveys is great, you'd never really know who's answering the questions, and you can't really control the demographics as much as you can with these guys. But the problem with these guys is they're a lot more expensive. So you're looking at a couple of £1,000s, a few $1,000s to run surveys through these guys. So this could be a restraint. If you haven't got that kind of budget, but you want to run a survey, you need to know whether or not you can use Google Consumer Surveys, and whether that would be strong enough and trusted enough for you to use. If it's not, and you need something more credible, but you haven't got the budget, then surveys might not be the best way to go. And again, you need to know this when you're brainstorming. Again, all of this goes into our brainstorming brief. All of this information we're gathering goes into there. Step 3 is to find visuals. Now again, don't overthink this. First step, go to Google Images. This is a really simple search that I've done for planning an Australia travel trip, and I put the word infographic on the end. Now all you have to do here is start scanning the results and see what catches your eye. As I was doing this, the one on the left hand side here stood out to me for a couple of reasons. One, it's one of the few landscape infographics on this page, so it doesn't really follow the usual infographic design. And also it's a much darker colour than the rest of them. So it clearly stands out to me. So I've done something a little bit different. So it grabs my attention, so I go for and take a look at it. And that's what it looks like. It's actually an infographic done by Forbes. And it shows the 50 most popular tourist destinations and breaks them down by different areas of the world. So for the UK, you can see Trafalgar Square is the most popular, followed by Pleasure Beach, Tate Modern, etc. Now I can see exactly the same for California, Florida, Paris, etc. This is kind of cool. It's not bad. It's a nice design. It's quite clean. But it did take me a few seconds to actually figure out what was going on and what the key on the right-hand side meant, and writing that back to the actual results. So it did take me a little bit of time to figure out. So as I'm looking at this, I'm thinking to myself, can I do this a little bit better? Can I take the same idea and improve upon it? Now, if I can't, then that's a restraint. It's something that isn't going to be a good idea when I'm brainstorming. If I think I can improve upon it, then it's an opportunity. So looking at it, those of you that are designers out there may have a lot of ideas of how you can improve upon this. It looks fine and nothing really wrong with it, but you can probably improve on design if you know what you're doing with that stuff. Now, I think I can probably make this a little bit interactive, make it a bit more intuitive, and allow people to zoom in, zoom out, and drill into areas that they're really interested in. So if I feel quite confident I can improve upon this, I can move to the next step, which is asking, has it been linked to? Has it actually been successful? That's a really quick way of doing this. There's a link down here on the left-hand side to a Google Chrome plugin that allows you to right-click on any image and then do a Google search for that image. And this saves the hassle of kind of right-clicking, copying the URL, pasting it into Google Images, etc. This does it all for you within 2 clicks. You end up with something like this. So in this case, there are pages that have embedded that infographic from Forbes. So you can see here virgin.com, visit 50, visually, travelandescape.ca, we can see that people have used this infographic and have linked to it. So this is good because we can see people are interested in it. So if we can do something a little bit better, the same sites or similar sites may also link to our version as well. With any visuals, it's actually a good idea to actually print them and add them to the brainstorming brief. And you can also give them to people as they walk into the brainstorm, have them on the table, so it kind of gives them something tangible to take a look at and see what they can do with it. Now, as a final tip here that kind of goes alongside all of this stuff, this isn't really the core of what we're trying to do, but one of the nice things about this process is that it allows you to set expectations as to what good and successful looks like in terms of social shares and links. And that's because when you're using, sorry, jumping ahead of myself, if your client or your boss says to you, I want 10,000 Facebook likes and 500 links per content piece, and I've just picked those numbers out of thin air, you can say to them, well, actually, that's not very realistic because the data is showing us that the average number of shares in our industry or from our competitors is, in this case, about 120 Facebook shares. Now, so them wanting 10,000 probably isn't going to be that likely. So we can bring their expectations in line with what's average in industry. Now, obviously, you want to aim better than what your competitors are doing, but there's a massive gap between 120 and 10,000. So we want to kind of bridge that gap a little bit and just set expectations to see, well, actually, our industry, this is the benchmark, this is the average, we should be aiming a little bit higher than that. So it really helps to set excuse me. It really helps to set expectations with your boss or your clients as you're going through this process. Now, I've talked a little bit, or actually a lot throughout this webinar about a brainstorming brief. So here's a takeaway for those of you that are still with us. If you go to era.net/brainstorm, you'll be redirected to a Google Doc, which you can use as a brainstorming brief. So you can just make a copy of it and use it as a template. So when you go into your next brainstorm, you can use it to give to your teams, get them to fill it out. You can fill it in for them and give it to them in advance. And this will help you go into that brainstorm with much better information and better research, and hopefully come out of it with strong ideas that you can actually use. So it's era.net/brainstorm. Go and take a look at it and make a copy of that. If you want a copy of the slides, you can go to era.net/Kerbu, which will take you off to SlideShare. So you can take a look at the slides, click on the links that I've referenced, and look at everything in a lot more detail. And that's pretty much it. I'm going to hand back to Alex in a second, but if you do have any questions, feel free to ask them now. And otherwise, you can drop me an email, paddy@era.net, and I'll be happy to get back to you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Paddy. Thank you for sharing your knowledge today with us. It was really, really useful. I love it. And so actually I have a question from me before we're going just to go into questions from our listeners. So do you think that scalable solutions they're better in building rather than using some unique techniques? Which one is really better in, I don't know, in our case? What you prefer?
Yep, so anything scalable and involving links is probably going to be quite risky, either now or in the future. So if we look back at techniques that Google have tried to, reduce the effectiveness of, they're all techniques that scale. So anything scalable is quite risky. But having said that, with content and content marketing, there are ways that you can scale this process quite nicely, but without compromising quality. So for example, you can repurpose content that you've produced sometimes, so you can do stuff that is repeatable. So for example, a classic example is the Mars Ranking Factor survey, which is a single idea, but they redo that idea every 2 years, so they're getting more and more from it without having to rethink an idea every single time. And also things like designs, interactive pieces. We've built several interactive pieces for clients now where we can actually reuse them. So we can repurpose them, put a different angle on the content, put a different spin on it, and we don't have to rebuild that content and redevelop it and recode it every single time. We can just reuse it. So you can scale things a little bit, but you have to be able to keep the quality as high as possible.
Okay, thank you very much. Yeah, I think I'm going to share your opinion as well, because I don't really do a lot of link building for my clients, and so basically, and there's so I can say that I feel that it's really good to be unique. in reality. So basically, we have a question from Jar about, so can you supply an example of one of your briefs, please? So I think Jar is referring to your first part of presentation.
Yeah, so I can't share an actual client brief, unfortunately, but the template that you've seen at the end of that deck, so era.net/brainstorm, that is the one that we do use. We have got a different variation of it, but that includes pretty much everything that we use ourselves. So I can't share an actual example, unfortunately, but that template should be all you need, and that is what we use.
So basically, can we, Paddy, just like not sharing, but maybe you can just simply send me just a couple of ideas so I can edit in a blog post so we can highlight it somehow. Is it going to work?
Yeah, of course. So, oops, sorry, I've clicked out of that.
No problem.
So one sec, let me get back to this. So what I can do is, I'll go from here. Yeah, so basically what I can do is maybe give you examples of, yeah, when I've filled in some of these for clients, but to take out the actual client name. So yeah, I can probably do that afterwards.
Oh yeah, perfect. That will be really useful. Okay, so that's a question about analyzing content and how it's a question from Andy. And so basically, is there a cutoff age of a past article that wouldn't you go beyond? So it's like he means that whether you're going really deep into digging some past articles, or you just cut off some kind of a line and you don't go beyond it.
Not really, no, to be honest. There is a cutoff in terms of the data that you can use. So generally, if you've got data that's several years old and might not be reliable anymore, then you can't really use that, or it's probably unlikely you can use it. So there's definitely a cutoff in terms of data that you can reuse. But in terms of articles and that kind of thing, generally, as far back as you can go should still be fine. To give an extreme example, in the past, we've looked at things that are actually kind of from the 1930s and 40s, or kind of things that have been drawn, visualizations that have been made that predate the internet. So that can still be kind of useful and still inspire strong ideas you can put online. So really, you can go back as far as you want, except for data, because data needs to be as up to date and relevant as possible.
Okay, thank you very much. And Andy is also telling us that it's just simply perfect. So we have also a question from Ron. He's asking, how many images should you have for the brainstorming session?
Good question. It's not so much about the number. I mean, when we do this, we probably go through 10, 15, 20 different examples when we've got a particular idea. So we'll try and find as many as possible. But generally, we'll find between 10 and 20. Sometimes we'll find none because it hasn't actually been done before, but that's quite rare. But typically, as many as possible that help you learn how you can improve upon that idea. So generally, I'd have a look through Google Images, probably look through at least the first 100 or so results, just to make sure that or at least reduce the chance that someone's done this before. But generally, as many as you can find. Obviously, we won't print all of them, but we'll print the main ones.
Okay, thank you very much. Really insightful. A couple of questions from Ross. The first one: how do you scale finding content information? Whoa.
So I don't want to say you can't. I think you can, because we use some of our tools to, for example, we use the BuzzSumo API, which allows us to scale things quite nicely, because we can run lots and lots of different searches at once and very, very quickly, rather than doing it manually. So there are lots of APIs out there that allow you to do that kind of thing, but you can't really scale the research side of things in terms of that insight and that feeling that you've got that you can do something better. So I think you can definitely scale the gathering of information using various APIs. BuzzSumo is definitely the main one that we use. But in terms of the actual kind of research, you can't really take out just sitting in front of a laptop looking at stuff and making notes. You can't really scale that or take that out of the process. But you can definitely scale the gathering of information, such as tweets, social shares, that kind of stuff. Well, not tweets anymore, but social shares. You can definitely scale that.
Okay, thank you very much. By the way, just it comes accidentally to my mind that also you can use our tool, Herbus Tool Pick, which provides everything inside it. So basically, you just need to go through it and see it. And if you want a demo, you just can ask. So just let us know, and that's a great tool to use. So that's also a question about how do you use to keep databases of contacts? So,
of course, yes. So we actually use BuzzStream for that at the moment. It's mainly a combination of BuzzStream, but also, to be honest, sometimes just Excel sheets and Google Docs. It's kind of a combination of both. We also use a tool called Gorkana, which is very expensive, to be honest. It's designed more for kind of PR outreach and kind of mainstream press contacts. But that's basically a huge database of journalists and editors, those kind of people. So we do use that as well, which keeps them all in there. We can make notes, all that kind of stuff. There's also one called Cision, which is, I think, actually owns Gorkana, or Gorkana owns Cision, but that's another good one. That is basically a database of journalists. But for managing our own contacts, we usually use BuzzStream.
Okay. Also, sometimes I hear that people recommend to use also something like SugarSand and Nimble, which is like a simple CRM system, which is not really particular for doing PR or blogger outreach, and also, as I know, Caribou is going to launch really shortly a special tool which is going to be connected with a pick, which is about contacts. So if you keep us following, we are going to let you know as soon as it's going to be alive. Okay, and so wow, we have more questions. Okay, we have a question from William. What is your current number one link building technique at the present for enhancing these content shares?
Well, in terms of content, it's all about finding why someone would care about it, really. But in terms of, I guess, easier stuff, the quickest win, I mean, this doesn't scale particularly well, but the quickest win is finding similar content to what you're producing and then contacting people, telling them that you've made a better version, or finding previous pieces that have got broken links pointing at them. So if you find a piece of content that's been done previously, put it into a link checker such as Majestic or Open Site Explorer, and you can find anyone that's linking to that content but the links are broken. You can go to them and say, hey, that's broken, doesn't exist anymore, do you want to link to my one instead? Like I said, it doesn't scale. You're probably not going to get the best quality links out of that. That's one of the easiest and quickest win ones, to be honest. And the other one is if you're producing any kind of visual content, so infographics or things like that, or photographs, you can do a Google image reverse search for that using the Google Chrome plugin I mentioned earlier, and find people that have used your infographic or your image but haven't linked to you. There's also a tool that does that for you automatically called Image Rider. It's at imagerider.com. And that does that automatically for you. So if you're doing infographics, you can kind of make sure that people are linking to you and not just taking your graphic and not giving you credit for it.
Okay. And we have a really positive feedback to encourage you, Paddy, that John is sharing that it's a really, really great talk. Thank you very much, Paddy.
Awesome. Good. Glad to hear it.
So I think it's going to be the last one question, but the rest of other questions we are going to reply in our blog post. So don't worry about that. Everyone will receive an answer to. So we are going to cover everything. So basically, it's going to be about API. So do you pull the API into a custom app or into a Google Doc, or so it can be any other third-party solutions?
So we pull it into our own dashboard, so it's our own custom app. which I did show you a screenshot of earlier, but you can also pull the BuzzSumo API into Google Docs. So I'll quickly pull this up 1 second. In this post here, basically you can see both. So I talk about how to do it in Google Docs, and there's also a section on how to do it using PHP. So yeah, you can do it with either of those. It's quite even I could do it, and I'm not a developer, so it's not terribly difficult using Google Docs. But if you want to build into a proper app or something like that, you probably are going to need some development time.
Okay, thank you very much. So basically, everyone, thank you very much for your attention, and it was really great to be here today with you. And I want to thanks Paddy for sharing a great presentation and for sharing everything with us. And I want to thank also Andy and Ross for really great questions and for being so proactive. We are going to put all your questions, guys, in our blog post and the rest of others as well, so no worries. So thank you very much for your attention. The recorded version of webinar will be also available, and I'll send the follow-up emails with everything. Thank you very much one more time, and have a lovely day. Thank you very much, Paddy, for finding the time to be with us.
Cool. Yeah, thanks, Alex, and thanks everyone for joining.
Thank you. Bye-bye. Cheers.
Bye-bye.